What if Anakin Skywalker did not have the Force but was still the chosen one? Folks, this will be a two-part story. This is part one. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into it. Our story begins as the Clone Wars are beginning to erupt around the galaxy. For so many people, this war would change so much of their lives. The Jedi were sent into battle. People of thousands of worlds would live in fear of their homes being destroyed in the crossfire of clones and droids. It was chaos, spreading quicker than anyone had imagined. But for some, nothing really changed. For the people living in the Coruscant underworld, they would just continue living their dangerous lives in the darkness, having to worry more about what they were going to eat the next day than the Republic going to war. And one of these people was now 19-year-old Anakin Skywalker. Anakin had lived an interesting life, and as he tried falling asleep in his apartment that was considered to be pretty nice in an alleyway 67 levels deep, he remembered everything. Sleep didn't come easy for Anakin, as every night he relived it all. His life as a child was one of his fonder memories, all because of his mother. Although Anakin was born a slave, his mother gave his life a light that he hasn't seen in anyone or anything else. His mother always insisted that there was no father in his life. Anakin was simply born from a miracle of life. Anakin wasn't sure if he believed it, but either way, he never knew what it was like to have a real father. He grew up in slavery, but became fascinated with machines, and in turn, with pod racers. No human had ever won, much less completed a pod race, until Anakin did it at the age of 12, around 2 years after the Jedi showed up looking for hyperdrive parts in Watto's shop. Anakin met them, and they eventually got off-world without his help. He wasn't ready to pod race at that time, despite the Boonta Eve Classic lining up around the same time that the Jedi were there with that beautiful woman, Padme. Anakin wanted to race and help them get parts, but he wasn't ready. Maybe if he had Jedi powers, he would have been able to, but alas, they left, and Anakin won a race just 2 years later. He won more credits than he could ever have imagined before that day. And that day, those hours after he won, they were the greatest hours of his life. Of course, Watto legally got 50% of the winnings, but that wasn't enough for the slimy bug. Anakin bought the freedom for him and his mother, and then a ship for the both of them. They were going to get off-world, find a place with farms and ocean, a warm climate, a life that wasn't full of sand and pain and scorching hot climates. But as they were about to leave Tatooine, the attack came. Pirates hired by Watto stormed the landing pad. They demanded that Anakin hand over the credits, and of course he did, for his mother. But then, the pirates shot her anyway. Anakin still remembered it like it was yesterday. At just 12 years old, just when life was at its best, all of it fell apart. He was dragged away as she died alone next to their ship. Part of Anakin wished they would have killed him too, but he was taken to Jabba's palace and put right back into a life of slavery. Anakin was placed onto a slave transport out of Tatooine and to the world of Nimban. He didn't speak or look at anyone. All he could think about was the life he was supposed to live, the life that was taken from him. It made him beyond angry, and that anger was what fueled him to stay alive and keep pushing as he lived his enslaved life on Nimban. Every day, as Anakin mined the dangerous minerals of Cortosis, he told himself there had to be a life after this, that there had to be something else. He was meant for more than this. And finally, after 3 miserable years, there was a raid on the mines. The Black Sun Syndicate, the main rivals to the Hutts, attacked the mines and were stealing the Cortosis. And this was where Anakin saw his opportunity. When the guards to the slave quarters were distracted, Anakin took a mining drill, attacking them with it. He didn't hold back, and the guards would be Anakin's first kills. He rallied the other slaves to help him break down the doors, and as the Black Sun fighters distracted the Hutt pirates, Anakin ran through the facility with determination. Finally, he reached the door, and seeing the sun for the first time in years nearly blinded him. But Anakin stumbled forwards. He felt blaster bolts whizzing past him. He heard fighters fighting and dying, but he just kept running. Finally, Anakin reached a landing pad where the Black Sun ship was taking off after a successful raid. Anakin grabbed a blaster from the ground, shot 5 Hutt pirates on his way, and Anakin jumped off of a cliff ledge, reaching for the open ramp for the Black Sun ship, but he missed. Luckily, a Black Sun member reached down, laughing at Anakin, saying that the kid really has grit, and Anakin was pulled onto the ship as it lifted off the ground. Anakin was thrown hard to the floor, surrounded by the criminals. One of them, clearly a leader, told Anakin that the Black Sun is looking for new members now that a handful of them were just killed in this raid. He can either join the Black Sun, or they'll just throw him back down. Anakin had no choice. He would join the Syndicate. At this point, 16-year-old Anakin was scrawny, but strong in both his mind and fighting ability. He never slept much on Nimban. Other slaves were always picking fights for extra scraps of food. So, Anakin had learned to fight, and with the Syndicate, Anakin joined it knowing that he would take the first possible opportunity to escape. He didn't want any part of a life with these pirates and slavers. These were the same type of people that had killed his mother. So, after a few months, Anakin was part of a smuggling operation to the Coruscant underworld. He and 3 others were smuggling coaxium, a highly explosive substance, to an important buyer. And as their transport entered the underworld, Anakin would secretly activate the coaxium, then jump out of the transport right as it exploded. It looked like a regular old accident, one that wasn't exactly uncommon in this line of work, and it allowed Anakin to start a new life, far from the life that he dreamed of in those hours of freedom with his mother, but still, a new life, a free life. In the first week here trying to adjust to living without a cage around him was a blur of noise and neon lights. The air was thick with exhaust. He slept wherever he could, and down here, people lived stacked on top of each other. Rhodians were curled up beside broken terminals, families were patched in tents under leaking pipes, gangs were carving out territory block by block. Everyone was tired, hungry, desperate. Everyone looked past him, like he was just another stray kid swallowed up by the levels. The surface above, it all felt like a myth. By the second week here, Anakin started to understand the rhythm of the underworld. Survival depended more on who you avoided than who you knew. He learned where food vendors were tossing scraps, which alleys were controlled by gangs, how quickly a single misstep could get you stabbed. He would also learn about the surface from overheard conversations. People talked about clean air, steady jobs, real sunlight, Jedi. But Anakin had to figure that up there, corruption just blended in better. Down here, nobody bothered pretending. And soon, the underworld would begin to truly test him. Anakin tried taking a job hauling scrap for a Trandoshan, only to be completely cheated out of pay. He was jumped outside of a bar, and escaped only because he fought like he had on Nimban, using the same anger he felt when his mother died, using desperation to escape. Anakin practiced climbing support beams, slipping through narrow halls where bigger men couldn't follow. He learned how to disappear. After a month, Anakin was adapting, and he knew that if he truly wanted to make a name for himself and get enough credits for a real life, he would need an advantage down here. It would be nice to have the Jedi powers everyone whispered about, but Anakin had other advantages. He was the best mechanic that he knew, and so he began putting together some gear to help him move around. The parts were not easy to find, but Anakin would find a scrapyard, and he would offer to work in exchange for parts instead of credits. The owner of the yard, a man called Lenny, would accept this. Anakin reminded Lenny of himself, and he could tell this boy would be a legitimate help around here. Lenny's scrapyard was the first place on Coruscant where Anakin felt like he had room to really breathe. When he mentioned wanting a way to move through the underworld faster than any speeder, Lenny laughed at the idea, but he would help Anakin put together this vision. The two of them dug through piles of junk and pulled apart old droids for micro-thrusters, compressed gas cylinders from mining tools, and rebuilt armored gauntlets into twin grappling launchers. They needed cables, and these cables were high strength and razor thin. Anakin would trim, weld, rewire all of the junk into something he thought to be quite brilliant. Lenny asked what Anakin called these grappling machines. Anakin called them omnidirectional mobility gear. Lenny chuckled, suggesting they just call it ODM gear. It's shorter, easier. Anakin finally finished the dual-handed gear, and the first test would nearly knock him unconscious. He fired a grappler into a pipe, then launched himself forward, but he slammed against the wall so hard that even Lenny winced. But Anakin just laughed. For the first time in years, he laughed. The feeling was unfamiliar, but wonderful. Anakin felt so free, and he spent hours every day practicing with these newfound machines, and after just a few weeks, Anakin's crashing turned into legitimate flying around. He learned how to spiral, to twist midair, cancel out dangerous momentum with a burst from the hip jets. He stole vibroblades that were perfect for tight spaces. His movements were a blur, as Lenny watched Anakin use the grapplers to swing, thrust, land, and workers in the underworld started to notice a shadow that was zipping across the highest support beams, something too fast and too controlled to just be random, and rumors would form before he even realized he was becoming something. And soon, Anakin flew between towers like gravity didn't even matter, gliding through vents and open shafts with elite speed and precision. For the first time in years, something inside of Anakin loosened. He was moving with a feeling of freedom, and this new gear and abilities would turn Anakin from a regular old street rat to one of the more well-known bandits in the underworld. For 2 years, Anakin would use these abilities and his reputation, even building up a small group who worked with him on some hired jobs. His main 2 partners in crime were a Mirialan man called Heron and a Nautolan woman called Isabel. The 3 of them worked well together, and Anakin even designed some ODM gear for the 2 of them as they moved through the underworld, stealing Republic credit shipments, taking out gangs, doing all sorts of bounties for the local police force. Things were good, and for the first time since Tatooine, Anakin felt like he had real friends. He was still deep inside of a mental shell that he was forced to build up over his years as a slave, but Isabel and Heron certainly helped to bring him out of it. Their time together would continue. Anakin would get closer to them, especially to Isabel, and eventually they would land one of the biggest jobs of their lives, a job that would give them enough credits to live up on the surface, something that seemed impossible for so long. The job was given to them through all sorts of heavily encrypted channels. The organizer of it was unknown, and that was fine, as long as they get paid eventually. All they have to do is kill a Jedi. Simple as that. A Jedi called Qui-Gon Jinn, the same Jedi Anakin met long ago on Tatooine. Anakin had fond memories of the man. He was kind and wise, but if killing him was the key to a better life, so be it. The bandits led by Anakin didn't know the history of it all. Qui-Gon has been a thorn in the side of the Sith ever since Naboo. Without Anakin, the Battle of Naboo was altered greatly. In the end, the Republic won, but it took longer than anticipated, and because Qui-Gon was stuck on Tatooine for longer than he had hoped, Mace Windu and Depa Billaba were sent to Naboo. The 2 of them ended up fighting Maul, and although Depa was killed, Mace Windu defeated the Sith Lord, and began to understand that the Sith have indeed returned, and with Qui-Gon surviving, he ended up agreeing to take the council seat that belonged to Depa Billaba. As time went on, Qui-Gon had urged the Jedi to step away from politics, and day by day, inch by inch, they began to do so, but it wasn't quite enough. As the Clone Wars were getting started, the Jedi were asked to participate, and Qui-Gon was leading a group that was pushing for the Jedi not to fight in the war. He was more than an irritant to the Sith, and so Darth Sidious worked through the channels of Coruscant to hire some well-known bandits. And now, we are back in present day, as Anakin's memories of his rough life come to an end inside of his apartment. He knew the mission was going to be dangerous. Part of him wanted to call it off. Fighting a Jedi was far different than fighting the local gangs down here. But more than anything, he wanted to bring Heron and Isabel a life on the surface. It's something Isabel dreamed of ever since they met. So, Anakin was determined to get it done. He will kill the Jedi Qui-Gon and live a better life with the reward. When morning came, Anakin, Heron, and Isabel made their way to the upper levels of the underworld. Chancellor Palpatine has assigned Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to go and meet with a supposed separatist spy who apparently knows where the battle droid control room resides. With this information, they could end the war immediately. Of course, it was fake. Palpatine was sending them to be killed by the bandits. It would be made to look like a separatist setup, and the Jedi would be forced into the war. And before long, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan would slip into the underworld. But even before reaching the rendezvous point, Qui-Gon felt that something was off. Obi-Wan felt it too, but Qui-Gon said they must push forward. When they arrived to the meeting spot, the ambush would hit quickly. 3 figures dropped from the rafters, cables whipping down as they flew in. Isabel and Heron came in first, spinning in tight spirals, blades flashing around, and Anakin followed a heartbeat later, firing a grappling line right into a support beam, slingshotting himself forward with Jedi-like speed. The Jedi barely ignited their sabers and dodged the first attacks. Obi-Wan pivoted, blocking Isabel's blades as she darted around him. Their blades could withstand a few lightsaber strikes. Qui-Gon took Heron's downward strike, and then the 2 Jedi leapt out of the meeting zone, darting down into the narrow alleyways. But this was perfect for the bandits. Isabel and Heron used their gear like extensions of their limbs, slicing through the air, forcing the Jedi into constant movement. Anakin launched, appearing from every angle, but the Jedi were smart and fast. Heron and Isabel attempted to corner Qui-Gon from both sides. They fired their grapples to opposite walls, snapping the cables as they dove towards him. Qui-Gon stopped between the converging lines, and with a single sweeping strike, he severed both cables in mid-air. This sent Heron and Isabel crashing through the window of an abandoned warehouse, bodies tumbling across the floor. Qui-Gon followed them inside, but before he could reach them, a blur of motion slammed into Obi-Wan from above. Anakin kicked Kenobi square in the chest, sending him sprawling down into the same area. Anakin then stood over Obi-Wan, but when he looked up, Qui-Gon was already standing over Isabel and Heron. Qui-Gon told Anakin to stand down, or his friends will face the consequences. Anakin froze. He looked at Isabel's pained expression. He knew they'd lost for the first time. So, he let the vibroblades drop, and Qui-Gon extinguished his saber. But then he told Anakin that their existence is not a secret. The Jedi, him especially, have become aware of their presence in the underworld. Qui-Gon admitted that he finds them to be fascinating, and he took this mission in hopes of finding them. Anakin didn't understand. Why would the Jedi be interested in him and his team? Qui-Gon told Anakin that he moves like a Jedi. He has the instincts of a Jedi, but he does not wield the Force. It's fascinating. Qui-Gon asked who his parents were. Anakin shook his head, saying his mother was just a normal woman, a slave killed the moment she was free. Qui-Gon apologized for his loss, then asked about Anakin's father. Anakin wasn't sure why he was even talking to this man. There was just something comforting about him. He reminded Anakin of his time with his mother, and he told Qui-Gon that he never had a father. He was born from nothing. How lucky of him. And for some reason, Qui-Gon froze. Obi-Wan felt a shift inside of him, and Qui-Gon finally realized who this man was. This was the same slave boy from Tatooine, the one without a father. Qui-Gon remembered that day when he learned of Anakin's birth. He remembered thinking of the Chosen One prophecy, but he thought for certain that the Chosen One must wield the Force. And yet, after all these years, against all odds, Anakin Skywalker was once more in front of him, the only human to ever finish a pod race, now the most successful bandit in the underworld. Qui-Gon thought of the prophecy of the Chosen One. It said that a Chosen One will be born through the Force, and through him, ultimate balance of the Force shall be restored. Qui-Gon realized there was no mention of the Chosen One needing to be a Force user, so he looked to Anakin and his friends, and he made them an offer. Come with him back to the Jedi Temple, learn to fight, learn to find purpose in a galaxy that is in need of heroes. A better life awaits them, if they choose it. Anakin looked at Isabel and Heron. They deserved this. He wanted this for them. It was a way out of the underworld. They gave Anakin a small nod, and so Anakin agreed. The journey to the surface was something they'd waited years for, and once they were used to the natural sun, they saw the beautiful towers, thousands of speeders flying through the air, the millions of homes, lights, shops. It was all so overwhelming. And then, the Jedi Temple came into view, perhaps the largest building in the entire planet. And then their speeder would be flown into the large temple hangar. As they landed, Qui-Gon told them to wait here. He must alert the temple guards that he's brought underworld warriors here. Qui-Gon would disappear through the exit door with Obi-Wan, and Isabel would tell Anakin that now is their chance. They can steal this Jedi speeder, sell it for enough credits to make a life for themselves. Blending in here above the underworld will be easy. The Jedi could never find them. Anakin was reluctant to go against the Jedi again, but Isabel hugged him, saying it's everything they've ever been wanting. This is their best opportunity. They don't want to be Jedi. They don't want to be anything related to Jedi. Anakin glanced back to the hangar door and said, fine, they'll do it. He quickly got the speeder started, breaking through the wiring panel, and the three of them got on board, taking off through the door as maintenance workers scrambled to stop them. Heron and Isabel grabbed a few extra things from the hangar that could be sold for more credits, and Anakin would fly them down into the streets as they got to work on selling. In the hangar, Qui-Gon secretly watched them go. This was a personal test for him. If Anakin truly is the Chosen One, they will find each other again. Down on the surface, Anakin, Isabel, and Heron would sell their speeder, and were now flush with credits. Anakin would tell the two of them that he's going to go and search for some lodging for the night, and the two of them should go and find some good food to eat. They would separate, and Anakin cracked a small smile, but there was one thing eating away at him. They never completed the mission to kill Qui-Gon for their secret buyer. Anakin hoped that they would just be able to disappear from whoever the buyer was, and he would secure a place to sleep for the night. But as he ran to his friends, something was wrong. Down a darker street, where his friends were supposed to meet him, there were trails of blood. Anakin followed the trails, and at the end of the alleyway, he found a tall, skinny woman holding 2 red lightsabers, standing over the bodies of Isabel and Heron. Anakin's friends were dead, slaughtered by this woman. This was Asajj Ventress, assigned by Sidious to kill the 3 bandits that failed to complete their mission. Ventress already killed 2 of them, then turned to Anakin, saying it wasn't personal. Anakin's ears were ringing. He was seeing red. The anger that was hiding inside of him was unlocked, the same anger he felt when his mother was killed. And as Ventress began moving towards him, Anakin activated his ODM gear, flying right for her. He shot upwards in a blur, dodging Ventress's opening strikes by inches. She pivoted sharply, dragging one saber in a sweeping arc meant to slice him from the air, but Anakin twisted mid-flight, thrusters flaring, kicking off a column, diving at her with his vibroblades drawn. Anakin screamed out as he swung around her in a tight circle, boots skimming the ground before he shot upward again, slicing into her shoulder. Ventress tracked him fast, sabers slicing through his cable, forcing him into free fall, but Anakin used the drop, hitting the ground in a low slide that carried him under her next strike. As he passed beneath her, he dragged the blade right across her ankle. She roared, hurling a force push that sent Anakin skidding across the courtyard. He rolled away, but he was already rewiring his gear on instinct. Ventress sprinted towards him, ready to take his head. Anakin fired a single grappler right past her, embedding it in a spire behind her back. As she closed in, he yanked, whipping himself forward with all the force stored in his line. He dodged her downward strike, spinning twice, and in the final rotation, he drove both vibroblades right into her torso. Ventress gasped, collapsing to the ground. Anakin ripped the blades free. The adrenaline drained out of him in an instant. He fell to his knees beside the bodies of Heron and Isabel. Ventress was dead, but so were his friends. He'd been too late to save them, and Anakin would see the logo of the Separatists on Ventress's armband. That was who was at fault here. The Separatists killed his friends. In the Jedi Temple, Qui-Gon Jinn would soon be alerted that a man was looking for him at the main gates. Qui-Gon would go to Anakin, and Anakin would tell Qui-Gon that he wants to learn to fight. He wants to kill the Separatists, every last one of them, for getting him and his friends involved in this war, for killing them. And finally, Anakin would be brought to the Jedi Council, where Qui-Gon would reveal his hunch to the Jedi. He believes Anakin Skywalker, this man without the Force, to be the Chosen One, and he believes Anakin resembles a path to fighting in this war. It doesn't have to be Jedi. It can be people like Anakin who want to fight back, along with the clones. The Council stared at Anakin, feeling how the Force surrounds him, but is not flowing inside of him. Mace Windu was secretly quite frustrated. After killing Maul many years ago, Mace secretly believed himself to be the Chosen One. He thought it was disgraceful for Qui-Gon to come here with a non-Force user and insist that he is the Chosen One. But Qui-Gon would talk about Anakin's abilities and how the Force has brought them together, and he would ask to train Anakin to fight instead of he himself having to fight. And so, while the Council didn't exactly think Anakin could be the Chosen One, they would agree to let Qui-Gon pursue this path. Perhaps the Anakin can give the Republic an advantage in war with his fighting style. He has already defeated a Sith assassin, and it was better to have his abilities in the hands of the Republic than in the hands of the enemy. Qui-Gon thanked the Masters, and after Anakin left the room, Qui-Gon looked to all of them with the utmost seriousness, as he said that one thing is for certain: he is the Chosen One. Our story continues in the thick jungles of Felucia, as a battalion of clone troopers are moving through the thick, vibrant trees in pursuit of the Separatist base that was recently built here. The Clone Wars have been going on for just over a year, and neither side was gaining a true advantage. And as the clone troopers, led by Commander Gree, moved further into the forest, they came into a clearing where they were suddenly staring face to face with 3 Acklay creatures. Gree yelled at his men to spread out, and a second later, one of the creatures stabbed down, crushing one of the clones. Gree cursed this planet, He yelled into his comms that reinforcements had better be on their way. Their mission was to take the long way around the forest, get to this new separatist base in order to tear it down. A group of special ops reinforcements were supposed to be here soon. As Gree and the men fired at the Acklays, battle droids began ambushing them from the other side of the clearing, and the clones quickly learned that the Acklays were deployed as a separatist trap. Gree hid behind a red bush, firing at droids, and then he saw an Acklay running right for him. He had a really bad feeling about this, but as the Acklay lifted its claw, Gree heard something. It sounded like grappling, swinging, and right as the Acklay was about to crush him, Captain Anakin Skywalker swung in, flying around the Acklay, using his modified vibroblades to slice right through the back of its neck. The Acklay fell, and Anakin swung around to the other two, using the same moves to cut them down from behind. Anakin spun, landing in front of Gree, and moments later, a dozen more clone troopers would swing in behind Anakin, using the same exact gear as they flew through the trees, firing at the battle droids. The special ops reinforcements were here, and they began pushing the droids back. Anakin would help Gree get to his feet, and together, they would push forward to eventually destroy the base. As Anakin and the others evacuated, Anakin looked down to the exploding base, and he was proud of how far he had come in the last year. He remembered his friends, Heron and Isabel, and he still fought for them. The day he went back to the temple and Qui-Gon brought him to the council was the day that his new life began. The Jedi had watched Anakin closely, and Qui-Gon began personally training him as if he were a Jedi. Qui-Gon would have Anakin sit with him, and the two of them often meditated, as Qui-Gon said that every single living being can feel the Force, even if they can't physically use it, and somehow, being in the peaceful confines of the Jedi Temple, it allowed Anakin to slow down and just be mindful for the first time ever. He did feel the Force, though he could not touch it. There were many occasions where Anakin would just stare at a cup or at a door. He would reach his hand out, trying to use the Force, but it just wasn't there. Anakin would learn the history of the Jedi, the Sith, the galaxy itself. He would even learn about Jedi prophecies. The Chosen One seemed pretty silly to him, a person born of the Force itself to bring balance. Anakin didn't think it could be him. He wasn't sure that he wanted it to be him, but the chance that it could be him meant that Qui-Gon was going to train him to be more mindful and to fight. So, whatever. Over time, Anakin was gifted an area in the Jedi Temple that was full of all sorts of machine parts and tools, as the Jedi wanted Anakin to lead his own special unit of clone troopers, using the same ODM gear that Anakin has designed. So, for weeks, Anakin and a few engineers got to work on designing about 30 different pairs of this gear, and then Anakin was assigned to Kamino to train specially selected clone troopers for what would be known as the Scout Unit. Anakin was the captain of this unit, and among the clone troopers that were selected, the best of the unit were a group named Yvonne, Cena, and Gordon. The Scout units would be put together, and using ODM gear, they would be sent into various missions as reinforcement groups. From the clones' perspective, Captain Skywalker was something new. He didn't command like a Jedi. He trained with them, fought with them, bled with them, and Anakin flew ahead of them on every mission, proving the gear worked because he worked. To the Scout unit, Anakin wasn't chosen because prophecy or mysticism. He was chosen because he kept them alive, because he knew how to fight. And Anakin preferred being looked at as a soldier rather than a prophecy. The Jedi Council never fully knew what to make of the unit. Reports described many victories that once seemed lost, and to some it all felt too unconventional. Qui-Gon argued for them relentlessly, reminding the Council that the Jedi do not belong in war. It's units like the Scouts that should be on the front lines if war is truly inevitable. The war demanded adaptation, but it also demanded that the Jedi learn from their mistakes. Qui-Gon constantly argued that this entire war represented a failure from the Jedi Council to listen to what is going on outside of Coruscant and the Republic. The galaxy is fighting back, and it is not their place to fight the people. Still, most of the Council would go into war, arguing that Dooku and the merciless droids are destroying cities and homes, and they simply have no choice until the Separatists engage in legitimate negotiations. That was the part that bothered Qui-Gon more than anything. His former master and friend, Dooku, has fallen so far. The fact that he was a Sith seemed undeniable, and Qui-Gon knew that the path to ending this was taking down the Sith. For the Scouts, their greatest victory once came on Okara, where a separatist factory was producing battle droids faster than anywhere else. Ground assaults had failed, air support was shredded. The Scout unit was a last-ditch desperation attempt. Anakin had split the unit, launching them through narrow shafts, while droid sensors lagged behind their speed. Clones fired their dual pistols mid-swing, carving through commando droids with their blades, meeting the blades of the droids. Anakin personally disabled the central reactor, grappling directly into the exhaust tower, swinging through a storm of blaster fire, slicing the stabilizers in one quick rotation. The foundry collapsed in on itself. Through the entire year, Qui-Gon had continued to guide Anakin, and to Anakin, Qui-Gon became the father that Anakin never really had. Qui-Gon spoke to him calmly, trusted him with responsibility instead of suspicion like the other Jedi, and after a childhood defined by ownership, slavery, and loss, that kind of attention felt wonderful. It allowed Anakin to break down the shell that he'd built up, and over time, he became much more cheerful, even on the front lines of battle. In quiet moments, Anakin imagined a future where the war ended, and this familial relationship with Qui-Gon only continued to evolve. Anakin didn't want to lose him, like he has lost everyone else. But Qui-Gon's love was complicated by some fear. As the war spread and the galaxy fractured, Qui-Gon felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. Every battlefield confirmed to him that the Jedi have failed, the Republic was hollow, and violence has become the only language left. And at the center of that chaos stood Anakin. The prophecy echoed louder with every victory, every report of the Scout unit turning impossible odds into sudden victory, and Qui-Gon began to believe that Anakin just wasn't part of the war, he truly was the answer to it. And that belief would slowly change the way that Qui-Gon looked at him. Conversations shifted, from Qui-Gon asking how Anakin was holding up, and instead to what will come next in battle. Their talks shifted from concern to expectation. Qui-Gon spoke much more often about ending the war, ending the Sith, ending the suffering that defined the galaxy for centuries. Anakin listened because he trusted him, and because he wanted to be worthy of Qui-Gon. But beneath that trust, a quiet suffering had formed in Anakin as well. He began to feel more like a tool of war than anything else, like he was being used as a vessel. It was an all too familiar feeling, and so their bond settled into something strained and distant. Anakin still looked at Qui-Gon and saw the father he wanted so badly, someone who might finally choose him for who he was. Qui-Gon looked at Anakin and saw the chance to end the bloodshed. Neither of them intended to hurt the other, but like so many relationships forged in war, love and purpose was blending. After Felucia, Anakin would return to the temple, and Qui-Gon congratulated him on another victory, saying that, in time, he will face the Sith, and the prophecy says he will come out on top. Anakin just kind of brushed him off, and he would take a walk through Coruscant, reminding himself of his life before war, his life with friends, Isabel and the others. And as Anakin walked the temple plaza, he would see Chancellor Palpatine leaving a transport ship after a meeting with Mace Windu and Yoda. Anakin looked over to the three of them, and Windu was giving Anakin the ever-familiar glare that Anakin never understood. Anakin had seen Windu in battle. He was truly formidable, but whenever Anakin tried speaking with him, Windu seemed too busy or too good for it. But as the Jedi turned and went back to the temple, Palpatine carefully waved Anakin over, saying he's been paying attention to his Scout unit. Anakin was taken aback by this, and he told Palpatine it's a great honor to be noticed by him. Palpatine told Anakin that he's fascinated by how he balanced work with the Jedi and the clones, and then he asked Anakin if he's ever played Dejarik. Anakin shook his head, and Palpatine would invite Anakin into his office. He would love to hear more about Anakin's adventures, and they can talk over the game. Anakin would agree, and he would go with Palpatine up to his office. And so, on a small table between them, sat the Dejarik board. Palpatine poured them drinks, and Anakin began playing, as Anakin would learn the game. The first few times it was nothing but simple chatter about Anakin's life, Coruscant, the galaxy, the war in a broader sense, and Palpatine spoke lightly, almost apologetically, about how war had a way of stealing real conversation from people. Their sessions together became a calm part of Anakin's routine, a place where no one needed anything from him, and they were a nice break from the war. As the fighting continued on, the Scout unit would continue to drop into conflicts as Anakin led from the front. The clones would follow him without question, but the fighting only got more brutal, and every return to Coruscant felt heavier than the last. Between deployments, Anakin found himself looking forward to Palpatine's office more than anything else. Whenever they played, Palpatine never rushed the conversations. He let the game breathe. Sometimes, they played in silence for long minutes, as Anakin was testing strategies. When Anakin lost, Palpatine smiled kindly and did some light bragging. When Anakin won, Palpatine said he was proud, and slowly, Palpatine would wonder aloud how much weight the Jedi have placed on Anakin's shoulders, how unfair it was for anyone, Force-sensitive or not, to carry a prophecy in the middle of a war. Over the months, Palpatine's questions were more pointed. He asked what truly separated Jedi from Sith beyond tradition and titles. Another night, he spoke of the Republic with tired disappointment, a system that was stretched thin, asking soldiers like Anakin to bleed while politicians debate morality. He never told Anakin what to think. He let Anakin reach conclusions all by himself. The Jedi Council rarely came up in conversation, only when Anakin brought them up first. Palpatine listened carefully, nodding as Anakin spoke of Windu's cold scrutiny, the Council's distrust of the Senate. Palpatine didn't condemn them outright, he simply wondered why protectors of peace seemed so prepared for war. Anakin would say that Qui-Gon is different. He didn't want the Jedi to fight, but there wasn't much he could do. And through it all, Palpatine remained steady and present in Anakin's life, in a way no one else had, ever since his mother. He allowed Anakin to be vulnerable. For a boy who'd spent his life being used by masters, war, prophecy, that presence mattered so much. Palpatine didn't ask Anakin to save the galaxy. He just wanted him to sit, relax, play another round, and by the end of a few months, Anakin had begun to shift in his views. He still thought of the Separatists as an evil entity that had to lose, but his view of the Jedi and the Republic was becoming far worse than when he joined the war. All the while, Palpatine was planning to use Anakin to eventually end this war and frame the Jedi for everything. Anakin would soon turn against the Jedi. He would join Palpatine in the Sith, and Anakin would spearhead a movement to tell the galaxy that the Jedi are not the saviors that everyone seems to think. Palpatine saw a future where he is the lone Sith Lord in the galaxy. He will become immortal. There will be no need for an apprentice. Anakin Skywalker will become the fearsome leader of the coming Imperial army. It will be rather fascinating. But first, Anakin's anger that Qui-Gon has managed to hide away inside of him must be unlocked once more. And a few days later, Anakin and the scouts would be sent out to a mission to Salucami. Jedi Master Adi Gallia had been captured, and they were assigned to infiltrate the Separatist prison to free her. The mission would be a success, as the group swung through the Salucami trees and towers, freed Master Gallia. But as they were leaving, a group of Separatist tanks that was hiding underground would be unleashed. They would burn down the trees in the surrounding area. The buildings were quickly demolished. The scouts were forced to land, and with nothing to swing on with their ODM gear, they were forced to escape the evacuation area on the ground. But then, General Grievous appeared, helping to cut off their escape. The first scout trooper would die before Anakin could shout a warning. He was stabbed by a Magna Guard electrostaff. Another was quickly crushed under Grievous's clawed hand. One by one, the scouts fell under Grievous's trap, shot down, impaled, sliced by lightsabers and thrown down. Anakin saw Cena, Ivan, Gordon, soldiers who trusted him, all die in pain, and the sound of it carved something raw into Anakin's chest, something Qui-Gon had worked so hard to tear apart. Anakin didn't understand. The only way Grievous could have set such a perfect trap was if he knew that he and the scouts were coming. All of it was perfectly designed to destroy him. They couldn't retreat. The only way out of this was through. So, together, Anakin and Adi Gallia moved to meet Grievous. The general would laugh as he and Gallia struck at each other. Anakin circled low, firing grapples into half-standing walls, trying to regain any altitude. But each anger point tore loose under his weight. Grievous slammed a backhand that sent Anakin skidding across the ground. Gallia would press forward alone, allowing Grievous to fully turn on her. His attacks became overwhelming, his forearms slamming constant pressure. Anakin got up as she fell lifeless in pieces from Grievous's power. Anakin looked around, scout troopers fighting and dying as more droids came out of hiding, Adi Gallia dead on the ground, and Anakin screamed out in fury, launching himself forward, slashing for Grievous's torso. Grievous roared, tearing the cables free, hurling Anakin through the air. He hit the ground, but quickly rose again, and this time, Anakin wouldn't hesitate or think. He would let the grief flood him as he thought of Shmi, Isabel, Perrin, Cena, Yvonne, the scouts. Every loss crashed together as Anakin launched again, this time grappling into Grievous's own armor plating, yanking himself in close, driving a vibroblade into exposed wiring. Grievous retaliated, grabbing Anakin by the face, slamming him down into the mud again and again. He slammed Anakin again, once more, and this time, Anakin stopped moving. Grievous threw him and turned away, but he heard Anakin begin to stir again. He growled with anger, asking why Anakin won't just die. Grievous held out all 4 blades like a spider, but Anakin used one final launch, spinning around Grievous and driving both vibroblades right into the general's chest, tearing them sideways, ripping them free. Grievous collapsed in a shriek of surprise. It was over, and Anakin would limp away to the evacuation site, escaping Salucami alone. His unit shattered, the mission a failure. The Separatists knew they were coming. Somehow, they knew about the scouts, that he was going to be there. Anakin thought about the mission. It was a special assignment given to him by Palpatine himself. He was the only person who knew about it. Anakin thought of his time with Palpatine, and how the man spoke of the Jedi, the Republic, the war. Was it possible that he organized this trap? So, Anakin didn't waste any time returning to Coruscant. He stormed into Palpatine's office, and he accused the man of working with the Separatists. He accused Palpatine of sending him to his death. Palpatine just turned, and he asked Anakin if he can finally see the truth. He was the sole survivor of this mission, because he is the Chosen One, not the Chosen One of the Jedi, but chosen by him, Palpatine, to be the leader of the reformed galaxy. Palpatine told Anakin they both know the truth. The Jedi and the Republic have gone stale. The wider galaxy is suffering under the system. Palpatine told Anakin to think of the slavery across the galaxy. Think of the underworld. Are the Jedi and the Republic the answers to these issues? Or have they aided in causing these issues? Anakin's mind was spinning. Palpatine said that sacrifice will be necessary for what is to eventually come to pass. The mission to Salucami was a test for Anakin, to prove that Qui-Gon is wrong. His emotions, his anger, does not make him weak. It has allowed him to beat both Ventress and Grievous, something no Jedi has been able to do. Palpatine said he sees a future where Anakin leads an army that destroys the criminals that are using slavery. A future where the Jedi do not sit atop a suffering planet, looking down on the rest. A future where everyone can live a normal life. All he's asking Anakin to do is trust him and join him when the time is right. Anakin would go back to the temple, mind still buzzing, and when he arrived, Qui-Gon could tell something was wrong. He asked what was going on, and Anakin would tell Qui-Gon the full truth. Palpatine is working with the enemy. It would not take long for Qui-Gon to organize a group of Jedi that were currently here on Coruscant. Windu, Kenobi, Fisto, and Shaak-Ti would get together, and they would go to Palpatine's office. Qui-Gon would ask Anakin to come with them, but Anakin shook him off. He said he can't do it. This gave Qui-Gon a lot of worry, but he had to give it up for now. But it was at this moment that he realized he may have failed with Anakin. After all this time, the boy he treated as the Chosen One was not coming with them to fight the Sith, because he has formed a relationship with Palpatine, the type of relationship that Qui-Gon neglected to form with him. And as the Jedi ship took off, Anakin would stumble down into a meditation room. He needed to be alone. He needed to calm himself. Anakin sat down, and he closed his eyes. He felt tears forming as he cursed the Force. He yelled out in his mind, asking why the Force would create him just to abandon him. He didn't understand. He couldn't be the Chosen One. But then Anakin felt a shift. He opened his eyes, and he wasn't in the Jedi Temple anymore. He was somewhere brighter, calmer, and standing in front of him was everyone he has lost. His mother, Isabel, Perrin, the scouts, they were all here, and Shmi told Anakin that he was chosen to show the people of the galaxy that one does not need the Force to fight back against oppression, and all of them still believe that the Force made the right choice in choosing him to bring balance to the galaxy. Anakin didn't know where he was, but he understood now that so many people were relying on him, and maybe it is his responsibility to guide the Jedi and the Republic back to what they once were. He can still do it, if he fulfills the prophecy. Out across the city now, Darth Sidious was dueling with the Jedi in his office. Kit Fisto and Shaak Ti were dead on the floor. Kenobi was slumped against the wall, hand cut off. Lightning burns in his robes as he was struggling to get back up. Sidious spun, kicking Mace Windu out of the window, and then he turned to Qui-Gon, locking sabers with the Jedi. Red and green light flashed between them as Sidious twisted, cutting Qui-Gon across the leg, pushing him down into a corner. Sidious laughed, holding up his blade, telling Qui-Gon that Anakin, his chosen one, will help him rule the coming Empire. Outside of the window, Mace Windu was struggling to climb back up. For the first time, he wished Anakin was here. And then, in the distance, Mace heard the all-too-familiar sound of grapples and jet boosters. Anakin swung from traffic, towers, and then grappled onto the open window. Darth Sidious would turn just in time to see two vibroblades sliced cleanly through his neck. His head would drop to the floor. Anakin would roll into the room. Knowing all of his time with Palpatine was fake. This was the right choice. With Sidious dead, the war would unravel. The end would come with Windu and Skywalker confronting Dooku together. There was tension between them, years of mistrust and unspoken judgment, but they fought together to end Dooku, and when it was over, there was a quiet understanding between them. They began to respect each other, and in the years that followed, Anakin, with Qui-Gon at his side, urged the Jedi away from the Senate halls, back into the galaxy's neglected areas. Jedi were sent to the Outer Rim as healers and protectors. Anakin led clones and Jedi into the underworld as they rebuilt hospitals and broke apart syndicate groups. Padme Amidala was elected Chancellor. Anakin worked beside her. Years would pass, and Anakin lived as a normal man who walked the lower levels of Coruscant without fear, watched Jedi train children instead of soldiers, and saw the Republic grow. He had brought balance, and he would always wonder if he would find that place that the Force brought him to right before he killed Palpatine. He lived peacefully, thinking he would go there when he died, thinking he would see everyone again. And so, he kept pushing forward to help anyone that he could. And folks, that is our story for today, part 2. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed both parts. I did. Hope you did. Hope we all did. Hope we all had a good time today. If you didn't listen to part 1 and you listened to this, well, that doesn't make any sense, but I guess go do that. I'll be putting a full movie together probably around Christmas, because I'll probably be celebrating Christmas. But anyways, yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Hope you guys did as well. I don't have a ton to say. I know, kind of lame. Let me think. No, not much. Appreciate you guys. Story was fun. Yeah, 2-parters are rare for me, I know. Hope to do more. It really depends solely on when I'm writing part 1. If I'm like, damn, I could really stretch this into 2 parts. That's all it is. I don't ever go into a story thinking it's going to be 2 parts. It's just if I'm like writing part 1 and I'm like, wow, I really want to write more of this. Anyways, that's how I do things. Appreciate you guys for watching. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.